Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of the Transection podcast. I'm Harris, and unfortunately Jordan couldn't make it to record anything this week, so we're doing a Q&A. And seeing as all the lovely listeners have sent in so many questions, we've definitely got enough to get through. So I hope you enjoy it. You only have to put up with me on my own for this episode, as next week Jordan and I should be able to meet up again and record our next episode that we have planned. And I also next week will be interviewing two amazing people that I want to introduce you to. The first is Amanda Wells, who is an amazing psychotherapist, and she specialises in trauma PTSD. And Amanda actually helped me through my own PTSD. I won't go into details now. 3 years ago, so I'd lived with PTSD for 20 years. And we worked together, and then she did the actual trauma treatment methods that she used already. 20 years of PTSD gone. So that's amazing. We'll talk about that more then. And she's currently studying for her trauma treatment master's degree. So she really knows her stuff, and she's really lovely, and we have a right laugh. And she's from Wales, so she has a lovely, soft, lilting accent. The second person I will be interviewing next week is the incredible Juno Roche. For those of you who don't, or is it Roche? Roche or Roche? I'm sorry, Juno, I'm probably saying it wrong. You can correct me later. For those of you who don't know, Juno is an internationally recognised trans writer and campaigner and founder of Trans Workers UK and the Trans Teachers Network. On the Independent's Rainbow List 2015 and 2016, she's a patron of Clinic Q and received the 2015 Nut Blair Peach Award for her campaign. She is also her books, she's an incredible author. She brought out Queer Sex 2 years ago. Last year she brought out Trans Power, and this year, it's not released yet, but she's about to release her third book, Gender Explorers. Juno's very poetic and very thoughtful and considered, but very kind of upfront and vulnerable as well. And I like that. It's very raw, very real, and very honest as well. Before we get into the Q&A, I want to read some testimonials that we received last week. Eddie says, "Hey, I think your podcast is brilliant. Listened to a good chunk of it last night. The way you've balanced it is great." Thank you very much. I don't have a name with this one. "I really enjoyed the first episode. You and Harris are both so well spoken, and the school tap story made me long." Thank you for that. And I also heard from Valentina on Instagram. Sorry, this is quite small and I don't know how to zoom. Valentina says, "I listened to your podcast this morning and oh my God, I just love you guys. Great work. Keep it up. Can't wait for the next one." Thank you, Valentina. Well, here is episode 2. So I put out a call for questions and I had so many, and I've put them all here and we'll see how we go. By the way, if you want to send in any questions anytime for anything, it could be related to your work, kids, like supporting somebody, it could be related to like marketing. I've been in the business and entrepreneurial world for some years now, so and done training and workshops and things like that. So if you want to ask anything that's specific to your industry or your situation, by all means send in questions. You can tweet us at TransectionP. We're also on Instagram at Transection Podcast, on Facebook at the Transection Podcast. So our first question is from Jasmine from London, who is a midwife. She says, "So not a question as such, but a difficult thing that happens sometimes is that when we have a same-sex couple, 2 women, surrogacy isn't legal in the UK, so we don't ever get 2 men in the surrogate. Having a same-sex couple has to be something you need to announce to the doctors or team who might come into the room. Otherwise, and this has happened so many times and is uncomfortable for everyone, but they often get asked if they're sisters or that's their mum or whatever." Yeah, I think within the medical world, there are still so many protocols and stuff that have been around for so many years, and habits that we're all still in, particularly around reproductive health, where we forget that different couples and different people exist. So I've helped different businesses and people get their heads around the language and the concepts that they want to use. So in this instance, you might want to introduce the idea of asking a general question rather than making it specific. So for your midwifery and the team and the doctors and everything, you might want to ask somebody, how are you related to the patient, rather than, is this your sister? That's pretty, yeah. I think that's a good way, and that way you're not going to put your foot in it. It's an open question, and you've not made it obvious that there's an assumption. I think that within this entire realm of people learning new ways to cope with things, we're so used to gendering things automatically that the thought that you would just not gender at all is much easier in theory, but actually doing it that way, you almost forget. So people say, oh, so should the question you ask be more complicated? So are you a mother, a father, or a parent, rather than making it more general? So not gendering things is actually easier than gendering things, which is what we're taught to do now. So just to not gender it in the first place, you do less work, which I think is very useful and saves a lot of time and energy. But to actually get out of the habit of it and to realise that you're even gendering things in the first place is the hardest part, I think. So yeah, thank you for that, Jasmine. Jack from Watford says, I think my main question would be, how do you truly identify with who you are so you can make others understand and not label you? Does that make sense? Yes, Jack, I think it does make sense. I think you're talking about how you present yourself and how you communicate yourself to the outside world visually. And it's a question I ask myself all the time. I don't have a particular answer. And I think actually this is one of the tough bits, because how you feel about a certain aspect of your appearance or how you present yourself is not how somebody else feels. So I might see strong stage makeup and think of David Bowie, but someone else sees strong stage makeup and thinks, wow, that's really feminine, so it is very difficult to present yourself in a way that is authentic to you, but then also communicates to other people, this is me. And actually, we're brought up to think that there's a specific way that you could look like a man or look like a woman, but actually that's not true. There is no universal way to do that for anybody. Think about over history, makeup was originally worn by men, as were high heels, and those have become now things that are more associated with women or femininity. Obviously now we're blurring those lines a little bit, which is cool. Obviously I'm going to be pro that. But also just so that people can express themselves the way that they want to. That's the important thing. Are you having a laugh? And don't tell people what they can and can't do. It's mean. It doesn't matter. Anyway, so yes, Jack, it's a tricky one. I don't really know. For some people who are non-binary or trans, they really enjoy the way that they've always dressed, just because you realise that your gender isn't the one that everyone kind of thought that it would be. It doesn't mean automatically that you're going to want to drastically change your appearance or that you hate everything about yourself or the way that you've done things. Some people, of course, do suffer terribly with feeling very boxed in, and they really are very uncomfortable. But plenty of people don't feel that way. Or there might be a few things that they don't like, and it takes a while to work that out. But overall, they're not too dysphoric about it, and they're okay with things for the most part. Yeah, it's very difficult. I don't really know what the answer is. I think besides society just becoming aware that everyone does things differently, and it's all valid, and it's all, you shouldn't make assumptions and you shouldn't guess. Better to ask, what are your pronouns? How do you want me to refer to you? And just because you see someone with a beard, it doesn't mean it's a man. Or just because you see someone with a lumpy t-shirt, it doesn't mean it's a lady. So thank you, Jack. From Edie, aged 10. Hi, Edie. youngest question asker. What age did you know you felt differently about your gender? This is a good one because actually I didn't really know what anyone was talking about. I remember even at nursery when they would talk about girls do this and boys do that. I was like, what? Why? And then I'd have to, when they were calling out for girls and stuff, I was like, oh, they mean me. Oh, right. It was really weird. Still now, I think I'm a really good example of kind of empathizing and really leaning on my faith to understand gender in the first place, because I have no feeling of that or what that is. So when people say, oh, I'm definitely a woman or I'm definitely a man, and that's how I feel, and I feel very strongly about it or whatever, I believe them, but I can't really relate. So I think the thing is for me, Edie, is that I never felt it to begin with. And just even when I was little, when people would talk about gender, I didn't really know what they were talking about. And then it never changed and it never got better. And not better, but, my understanding didn't ever grow or anything. And I was brought up in a very traditional household with two parents that were together. And, my dad worked a lot of the time and mum worked, but she was at home as well and she was around for us. It was a very kind of Western, traditional kind of household. So, and I did have these very masculine and feminine role models in my house. And, but yet I was very, I didn't really know what to make of any of it and didn't know what meant what, or, didn't relate at all. So I hope that answers your question, Edie. Thank you. From Nikki, aged 40. Hi, Nikki, aged 40. It's a funny last name. What do you want for yourself? And is there anything in the external world that would need to change for you to achieve this? Nikki, that's melted my brain. That's really melted my brain. It's a really good question. I don't know. I'm a little bit stumped, Nikki, aged 40. I think most of my kind of exploration and my journey and my passion is really about the inner world, in the, of the mind or the soul or your own sense of self, and your journey and your unpicking the unhelpful things that you grew up with and nurturing the helpful things that you grew up with, the things that help you to be happier and more connected. And in the external world, mostly I just enjoy food and friends and a bit of hanky-panky. But I mean, during lockdown, obviously that's not happening, and I'm staying at my parents' place, so a bit of a cock blocker, but it's okay. I've told my mum that. I've said thank you for letting me stay here again at this very old age, but it's a bit of a cock block. And she laughed and she said, yeah, I could see that. And now we've got lockdown, so there's absolutely no chance. Anyway, yeah, I think in the external world, I don't think, Nikki, aged 40, that there's anything I want for myself that I'm not prepared to fight for or do my best to get. I think that anything's possible. That's probably very annoying for a lot of people, especially when you do face limitations, and you might live in a country that is very unkind to certain demographics and things like that. I mean, most countries are in one way or another anyway. Even if they're not unkind, they're not necessarily inclusive, and that's a big difference. So Nikki, I'm not really sure. There are things that bother me, and I think I'll discuss that with the other questions that we've been sent in. But I think that after coming out, there was for me a grieving period, maybe for a couple of years, where I felt, I really had to accept the way that the world was and that it's not going to change anytime soon. And a lot of the things that I want for my life are things that are not going to change overnight. And even the lovely people I have in my life who are super supportive, it's a really long process to learn all of this stuff. It doesn't happen in a short amount of time. Even if you dedicate a lot of time to researching and listening to other people's stories and getting as much information as you can. It is a long time coming. So I think for a lot of us, there's kind of a surrendering to the way that things are and trying to live a normal life as much as you can, just the same way as anybody else's, you know, working or learning or looking after your health or having connections and or maybe families, maybe partners, or hobbies and all the same things that everybody else does and struggles with as well. Right now, no, probably nothing that I want for myself that depends on the outside world changing. I think that's a tricky thing to get into, and definitely at the beginning of my coming out, I found the whole situation very, very difficult to come to terms with. I've kind of let go of a lot of that stuff, of relying on the outside world changing in order for me to get what I need. I think that a big part of keeping your sanity is to remember that there are people out there already who know this stuff, who are supportive, and actually who are in the same boat as you as well sometimes. So I think the world, the external world that we want, to a certain extent, is already there. It's already growing and developing, and you're not on your own. I think that's all that I can say about that. It's a very good question though. Thank you very much, Nikki, aged 40. This must be a relative of yours, because next question is from Duncan, aged 40. Same last name. How have you been treated differently since you came out? This is a good one. Okay, so I'm really lucky that I'm surrounded by lots of people who are open-minded and open-hearted and have gone, well, I don't get it, but I love you, so I'll try and work this out. And that's really good. And that's a difficult thing to do. Adults do not like being newbies at anything. We hate it. So I think the fact that I'm surrounded by so many adults who've gone, okay then, is really lovely. It's good. I do appreciate it. I mean, a lot of people would say you don't get a gold star for doing what you're supposed to do. And there is that, but also it does take some guts, I think, to be ready to mess it up. So I just want to acknowledge that. The two things that I think are particularly different is, first of all, I think I mentioned it in episode 1, I don't get asked really anymore like I used to, like if I'm going to get married or have kids or what my future looks like. It's kind of like people don't really know what to say to me, or the interest that they used to take, they don't take that interest anymore, because they sort of go, oh, well, I don't know really what your gender situation is, therefore I don't know what to say. As I mentioned in episode 1, there's two sides to that. The fact that people don't ask those questions so much anymore, and firstly there's a relief because I feel under less pressure, but then on the other side there's sort of a bit of a sadness that I feel slightly less relevant in a way, or that people aren't interested, or they're a bit awkward, or you know, like there's almost like a loss of intimacy, which I do feel a bit sad about sometimes. And if I want to talk about those things, I have to bring it up and tell someone that I'm thinking about it and this is how I feel, but generally people don't ask. So that's something that I have mixed feelings about. And the second thing since coming out is that people want to talk about it all the time. And it's so funny because in so many circles, non-binary and trans people are really depicted as these people who want to talk about it all the time. And I guess for some people that's true, and actually that's fine, and I fully support it. It's so much to process and you do need to talk about it. But I would say that a lot of the time I'm just existing, or like going around to people's houses for dinner, and they just have to bring it up all the time. And like, you know, there's that meme that went, or the topic or the joke kind of thing that went around like a few years ago, although it's been around forever, where someone says to their black neighbour, oh, my friend at work is black, you must know them. I had that moment happen to me with non-binary stuff. I was at my best friend's birthday party and we were out and there was a girl there. She's really nice, but she did it to me. She said, oh, we were walking from one bar to another and we ended up walking next to each other and chatting. And within literally 2 minutes, she brought it up and I was like, oh, okay. She said, yeah, I've got a friend who's non-binary. Do you know them? And I was like, what's their name? Like, how would I know? There's not like just 3 of us. Oh, it was funny. And she was like, oh, well, my friend's been like, was on this interview with somebody and then got involved in this Twitter thing. So, you know, they're quite well known. And I was like, no, I'm sorry, I can't say I've heard of them. It's just really funny. And I've got other friends who I've known like for more than half my life, and I'll go round for dinner and we're just talking about normal things like, you know, nieces and nephews and work, and then they just have to bring it up and it's like, oh, I saw this thing the other day, or I met somebody and who was talking about this, and I'm like, yeah, oh, okay, that's cool. And it's not that I don't want to talk about it, it's just that there are certain people in my life, it's like I'm sat there and it's like there's almost like this silence and they have to puncture it and bring it up because they're still a bit awkward or they still need to talk about it or understand something. And it's fine, I'm not upset, it's just funny. And sometimes I do have 1 or 2 people in my life who they really can't help it, to the point that I know that if I'm going to go and see them and spend time with them, and these are people that I really love, I have to be prepared that there's going to be a big conversation about it. I can't sit and eat dinner with them without them bringing it up. So yeah, that's a big thing. It's like the elephant in the room. It's like I've adopted an elephant, and now everywhere I go, we have to talk about the elephant. It's a big statement, apparently, that I'm just being myself, and some people really like. I don't mind people mucking it up and being awkward and needing to ask questions. I think that's great. I think the more open conversations we can have about it, the better. But some people just really, they're a bit twitchy, and I don't know, I find it a bit funny. Thank you, Duncan, aged 40. I hope that answers your question. It's very silly. From Elle in St Albans, she's asked me 3 questions. Oh, we'll give it a go, Elle. We'll give it a go. Let's see if we can bash this out. That's what she said. Elle from St Albans, her first question is, how would you tackle a parent misinforming their child about non-binary stuff if you were present? E.g., if you were at a friend's and they said something wrong to their child. The best thing that I would do, Elle, is to say, oh, it's interesting that you say that because I know somebody like this, or I've learnt this and it was a little bit different. So I think it's opening the conversation and saying, oh, that's interesting. I do know some people who are like this or like that, or offer them a different way of thinking about it, or some other information. And it's up to them if they're going to listen, or if they're interested, or if they just wanted to be in authority in that moment and they don't want to be questioned. Some people are like that. I guess all of us are like that at different times. Elle's second question, are there specific dating services you know of for people who are new to a gender or title? I have, over time, I'm almost chronically single, although I would like not to be. I have tried many different platforms over time. There was one that was brought out for trans people specifically, and the usability was not great. It was definitely in the beta phase. I didn't really like it. It didn't really work. So, for example, even on Tinder, you can change your gender identity on there, your label, whatever, that's fine. And it's the same on OkCupid, which has been more inclusive for much longer on OkCupid. But both of those, you still have to choose whether you're included in search results for men or women. So it's kind of like, you can call yourself what you like, but ultimately these are the searches we're going to put you in the results for. So it's progress. It's a nice idea, but it doesn't work very well. It's pretty difficult. I mean, a lot of the times people are meeting up in sort of LGBT spaces, or like going out on nights out and drinking, if that's your sort of thing. That's not really my thing. I like a dance occasionally, but I generally don't drink at all. And I have sensory issues, so nightclubs are something I really have to be geared up for, otherwise I don't want to do it. So yeah, it's tricky. There are little things out there here and there, but they're not well known. I want like a specifically queer Tinder or whatever, where it's just all queer people, asexual, trans, non-binary, bisexual, whatever. I think that should exist, and that should just be like one universal thing. If a company decided that they were going to bring that out, it would be incredible, absolutely incredible. But nothing like that exists. So Tinder, OkCupid, all these people, I'm looking at you, get it together. What you've got right now is a bit shit. Thanks for the thought though. But it's not working. It's not working. And the third question from Elle: what do you think are the best few big changes the government would need to make to allow for a more inclusive society? Oh, Elle, amazing question. Just like to preface this with I try very hard to keep up with politics, and how things work, but I mostly think it's bollocks designed to be bollocks, to give you bollocks results. sorry, that's like really negative and pessimistic. However, to answer the question, first of all, to legally recognise genders other than male and female, because plenty of other countries have managed it. It's just England doesn't want to, I think the English government doesn't want to upset people who disagree with the fact that we exist and we're here, like literally right now. I'm one of them. I'm talking into the camera, talking to you right now. They've even tested me. I've been seen by people and I'm not mental. You know, I am a fully sane, self-realised individual. I'm not making this up because it was a lot of effort for nothing. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, the government just needs to like put their big boy pants on and basically make it legal to recognise people like me and stop making things so bloody hard. A bit of passion there just came out. Secondly, they need to make it not so difficult to change our gender markers on paper. The amount of hoops you have to jump through is absolutely mental. So to put this in perspective, most people who go to their GP and they say, right, I need a referral to a gender clinic or whatever, between asking for that referral and getting it to actually being seen at all or to get hormones can be 5 fucking years. 5 years. And for people, it's even longer than that. I mean, that's hormones, and not everybody wants hormones, and not everybody wants hormones or surgery, by the way. Everybody's different. Some people just change how they dress or their name or whatever, or nothing at all. It's a whole rainbow of different options. You have to go through a huge amount of stuff before they will even let you change the title of your name. You have to have a certificate to say, I finished my transition or whatever. I'm now claiming my identity as a male or female person, and then you can then apply to change your name, your title to Mr. or Mrs. or your gender to female or male, whatever. And that takes years. So I think those are the two things: is making the legal gender thing a bit more friendly, and secondly a bit more and inclusive, and secondly a bit easier to navigate around. Like it shouldn't be this difficult to be recognised and jump through hoops. You know, other people are given these markers of male or female and they never have to do anything to get that. They just exist for that, you know. And just because somebody got it wrong, that means for us, for non-binary and trans people, it then means that we have to spend years fighting to correct that. It's more than just a biological conversation, you know. It's treating us a little bit like farm animals, like, oh, well, what role are you playing in reproduction? And we're like, that's not really any of your business, you know. Who I am as a person is more important, and that's, you know, that's my social, that's what I'm putting forward, like who I am, that's how I interact with the entire world. I feel like gender's made into such a big deal in day-to-day life, and then people sort of throwing biology at it. I'm just like, who whips their dick out at a business meeting anyway? You know, and who is the sort of person who isn't comfortable talking to their friend until they're definitely certain what genitals they have or if they've got tits? It's just all so weird. Like, since when did that matter in the first place? It seems to me to only really matter either when people are just updating their understanding, or people want to be gatekeeping and say, well, you're not allowed to do that unless you conform to these things, or you know, you're not allowed to have that or to be recognised the way that you want to because I've said I think it's wrong. I'm just like, oh, piss off. You didn't even know me anyway. Like, what difference does it make to you? Anywho, after that little rant, thank you very much, L in St Albans, for your questions. I hope that answers it. Oh, and thirdly, actually, I know this is sort of an offshoot, but one of the biggest challenges I think we have as a society that does view us as these reproductive machines before we're anything else. I mean, that's my opinion, but it's like reproductive health. You know, I'm non-binary, but I still have reproductive health. I was pregnant when I was 21. That was a whole ordeal in and of itself. I don't have children. And, you know, I had to go through that, and it was really, I grieved for 5.5 years after that situation, that's another story, and I'm happy to share it at another time. But it was really harrowing, and, you know, to have gone through that and then to be left out of the conversation around reproduction is really difficult because, you know, in a moment when I want to relate to people who've also had, like, you know, similar situations of feeling sad or being scared, but then they're only talking to women, and I'm like, I either have to just kind of crack on and not correct them, or join in almost in disguise, or I, in that moment when I want to be relating, I have to then fight for my position to even be at the table, even when I've had that experience. Not that having bad experiences should be the way that you earn anything, or it shouldn't have to, we shouldn't be validating each other through pain and how much pain, you know, it's not pain Olympics. Yeah, so I think a lot of the thing around reproductive health, you know, they talk about women's health and men's health, and actually that doesn't mean very much. There are women out there who don't have certain body parts, either because they're trans or they weren't born with it or it didn't develop or whatever, and likewise for men. But you know, you think about like cancer and mastectomies and things like that, and we're all so different anyway. Like, it makes much more sense to me to address the issue, say, of pregnancy rather than women's health, you know, or prostate health and things like that. We can talk about the health of the thing without gendering it, because it's just not accurate. It's just not accurate, even from a medical, social, emotional, spiritual, whatever point of view. It's never accurate to do that. So I think that there needs to be a really big shift, and I think it does need to be supported by government to be more accurate and represent the people that are accessing these services and going through these things. We're already here. It's not a case of are we here or are we valid or anything. Like, we're already here. It's already happening. That's how I feel about it anyway. So thank you, Elle from St Albans, for all of the questions. Okay, from Amanda in Watford. Amanda's asking, what was your journey like? What's it felt like for you? How's it been received? The battles that you've had to face and still do, particularly maybe around your body, and the decisions you have yet to make, still not knowing how far you'll want to go to meet your needs. Okay, that's quite an in-depth one. So I covered this a little bit on the first episode, what's it felt like for me. It's just been really weird. I came out when I was 26, the second that I realised about being non-binary. And I was like, this explains so much, because up until then I just never related. I never knew what people were on about. I always felt sort of alien and other, and then I found this and I was like, yes, it makes perfect sense. This is lovely. Like, it was a real coming home. But then I felt, you know, similarly to everyone else, I was then like, what the fuck? Like, I have so many questions. And, you know, I was so on my own. I didn't know any non-binary people. at all at that point. I was the only one. I didn't have any friends at that point on Facebook, even, who were non-binary. I didn't have any support groups. I literally didn't know anybody. I didn't even know a trans person in my own personal life. Literally no one. And it was weird, because although I was kind of coming home to myself and it was incredible, got a bit emotional then, I was then suddenly more isolated. It was a very interesting and very contrasting and mixed experience. It's generally been received by the people that know me very well. I think because I'm already very emotionally aware and analytical and matter of fact and honest with myself most of the time, I think. And I think people generally, they do trust me. So I think the second that I explained this, I said, listen, this is something I've worked out. I've really thought about it and done a lot of reading on it and talking to people. And yeah, this is what's making sense. And I've actually felt this for a long time and I've thought about it. So generally speaking, people have, received it well. I think those that haven't have probably just drifted away and we weren't that close to begin with, or they've kind of not made the effort, or they're not keen. I have actually had a friend or two post things on Facebook that are horrifically transphobic. And in those moments, it is such a punch to the gut. And I did boxing. So no, do you know what? It's worse. It's worse than a punch to the gut. It's really, really heartbreaking. It's it's awful. But in those moments, I really have to take a breath and think, right, I know this person. I have to assume that they thought there was some validity, or they believe this absolute crap that they've posted. And a lot of it's propaganda. There was this video it's done the rounds for years, but it was from a few years back, by this medical association in America that's not a real medical association. They've just called themselves that. They released this video, this propaganda. It's just horrible, about trans kids and trans people and how it's a mental illness. It's just awful, which is not true, by the way. No more than being homosexual or anything else. It's just complete rubbish. So yeah, generally it's received well, but in those moments where people post these sorts of things, I do have to take a moment and say, listen, I don't know if you are aware, but the thing that you've posted, I do know about it, and actually it's not true. This is propaganda, and I can explain it to you if you want. In those moments, a lot of the time, the person does not want to back down, does not want to hear about it. They're very emotional, and they feel that for some reason it's okay in that instance to be unkind, uncaring, and to believe in misinformation. So in those moments, I have to really just step back and just decide, like, is this a friendship that I want to continue with? They're not... I've had friends come to me with things and say, look, I've seen this, can you please explain it to me? I'm concerned. And I've been able to say, that this is not the stance, this is not ethical. We would never, so for instance, there's that propaganda, that video that I talked about doing the rounds, was talking about surgery and hormones for 5-year-olds, which doesn't happen for trans kids. I mean, a lot of intersex children are operated on unnecessarily when they're small, and they shouldn't be, but no one seems to really care about that. That's another conversation for another time. A lot of people have come to me and said, oh, these I've seen this video that's talking about these things and I think that's terrible. And I say, yeah, I think it's terrible as well. It's not based in reality, It's this kind of fear-mongering thing of spreading around absolute bollocks, to be honest. So, yeah, generally it's been received well, but there have been moments that have really fucking sucked, to be honest. But generally I'm very lucky and I'm very appreciative of the people in my life. The battles that I face and still do, it's mostly... Okay, so two things. Accessing health services and going to doctors and gynecologists and whatever. I need to do it and I'll go for my health, but honestly, they're so not well versed. They're not well versed. And because non-binary genders or a third gender or whatever is not recognised, nowhere on my paperwork can I say, I'm non-binary, please don't misgender me. And as a result, when I was 25, before I realised I was non-binary, I had early cervical cancer, which luckily was sorted out, but it was like a year of my life where it was like testing and biopsies and removing it and stuff. That was really difficult, and luckily they got it all, it was fine. My follow-up, I was all clear, so that was good. No chemo or anything, it was early enough, they just had to remove it. So that was good news, but a very difficult thing to go through, especially at 25. And then recently I went for another pap smear, they call it. Is it pap smear? Yeah. But I went for another one, and just to check up, and I've been well for years, and they said, you've got it again. And I was like, fuck's sake. So I just accepted it. I was pissed off more than anything. I was like, come on, universe, you're taking the piss now. I've done this once. Yeah, so I had to go to hospital, and the whole time so my first test that I had, I was at my local doctor's where they just do the test, just do the smear test. And she kept talking about ladies this and ladies that, and I was like, oh, please don't do it. I was like, And then when I went to the hospital, I had these two amazing nurses. I loved them so much. They were so much fun. The first one, she was like, what contraception are you using? And I was like, I'm not having sex. She's like, haha, abstinent, and like ticked the box. It's so funny. I love them. But again, they were just talking about ladies all the time. And I was like, please no more. I don't like it. No, it's not even not liking it. It's just so dysphoric. It's awful. If you can imagine that everybody started calling you a different gender and insisting that that was true over and over and over again for years, and even people that love you, like, it's fucking just, it's too much. It's absolutely, it's too much. Yeah, it's a bit of a mind fuck. Anyway, so that's definitely a battle, is accessing health services. It's a pain in the fucking asshole. Excuse me. Jordan's not here to keep me in line, so I'm just swearing like a sailor now. And the other thing is dating. So I'm open to dating people of any gender. I'm not bothered, like trans, cis, whatever. I couldn't care less. It's just a detail to me. However, I'm aesthetically very attracted to masculinity. So my two ex-girlfriends were butch and just very handsome, and I was just very attracted to both of them. I've also had a two trans feminine partners, men. Like my most recent relationship was with a very muscular, very attractive man, and yeah, I won't get too much into that because I'll forget my name and where I live. However, I think this other battle that I want to talk about is just, I meet so many straight men, and we have, between the two of us, have, like, whoever I'm meeting or getting on with, who have incredible chemistry, and they just can't quite come to terms with the fact that we're attracted to each other and that I'm non-binary, and they're like, and there's a bit, I think I mentioned it in episode 1, that there's this bargaining that goes on, and it's just all a bit awkward, and yeah, I don't know. And sometimes it's just a bit too much. I'm very supportive of people on their journeys of learning, because I had to do exactly the same. I was not, as I've mentioned before, I didn't pop out of the womb with a manual on this shit. I've had to learn it and fuck it up and be a twat just as much as everybody else has to do it. So I make no mistake about it. It is a long thing, and you have to get over some of your own kind of arrogance and enter into the vulnerability of being a newbie and learning about it, and having the bravery and the courage that it takes to reconsider your own self and where you fit into all of this. It's no small thing. It is no small thing. And I completely support that. However, being in a relationship with somebody who's still so new to all of that stuff is incredibly draining. And I'm of the opinion that to have a balanced and healthy relationship, you both need to carry your weight a little bit, and that if you've got a couple where one of them is very much in the position of being the teacher, I was going to say it's not very sexy, but to some people I'm sure it is very sexy. But I just mean, if you're in a position where you have that distance between you because the other person is still learning about you, you're almost a subject of their learning. It's a bit odd. It's a bit uncomfortable, and I think it's tiring for both people sometimes. I'm not saying it can't be done, but I think that it's definitely challenging, and sometimes I love the idea. So 2 years ago I had a trans feminine partner, and although they were very much a newly hatched trans person, they're only just kind of coming out, we did have this incredible bubble, and whenever we were in each other's company, there was no, the gendering just didn't happen. We existed completely without it, and it was just so relaxing and such a relief. It was so nice to be in that bubble, just the two of us. Or even when their friends came over, and we were all trans non-binary, and it was just lovely, such a breath of fresh air and such a relief. And I think being with other queer people, and particularly if they're non-binary and or trans, I think there's something really lovely and very, very relieving about that, just to have that unspoken bond and understanding. You don't have to explain yourself all the time, and it's kind of like that inside knowledge, do you know what I mean? So Amanda, the final part of your question, Amanda, was around your body and the decisions you have to make. So I do suffer from dysphoria. For a long time I wanted to microdose with testosterone and have top surgery to achieve a more masculine looking chest. But at this point in time I decided that I just need peace for a while, and to go through all of that is, you know, I've had surgery for other things before, you know, like health issues and other things that was like unavoidable and stuff, and you know, medication for even just you know, earlier on in my life I had like hormonal contraception and stuff. I struggle with all of that. It's such a big thing for me on a sensory basis, on a chemical basis, and also recovering from surgery is really hard. When I was 18 I had my shoulder operated on. I don't know, for those of you who can see, I've got a scar that runs all the way along here. It's like above, for those of you who can't see, it's above my collarbone. It's had a rib removed, an extra one, what I was born with. It was compressing the artery and the nerves that go into my left arm. And when I woke up, not only was I recovering from major surgery, but I was partially paralysed as well. So I was in physio for like 11 months. And surgery is a risk, you never know what's going to happen. So I think for me, I don't know, it's a big undertaking, and I think mentally, emotionally, and the way my life is at the moment, it would be too much, and I can't consider it. And also, I don't hate the way that I look. For me, it's like small tweaks. It's not like an overall, like, I love makeup, and I used to do that hair and makeup designing as a job. So I don't think that I'll ever stop mucking around with my hair and my makeup and stuff. And how I dress is kind of middle of the road-ish. And that's enough for me at the moment. I've made peace with where I am at the moment, and yeah, I don't know, and that's the difficult thing that I had to do, was to acknowledge that I don't know. I don't know how it's going to end up, and actually, before I had put myself under this pressure, like there was this, you know, I had to do it now, and you know, I'm not suggesting that anybody else shouldn't. I mean, Jordan, as they talked about on episode 1, they'd come out and within 2 weeks they were on, or was it 2 months? It was very quick anyway, they were on hormones. And for them it was essential and extremely euphoric and a very, very good thing for them. So it's different for everyone. It's really hard to work out. There are no rules. So yeah, thank you, Amanda. I hope that answers your question. Hannah in Aylesbury asks, would you rather have dicks for fingers or dicks for toes? Amazing. Well, I've thought about this, Hannah from Aylesbury. I've thought about this, Hannah. And I don't really think I could decide, because if you had dicks for fingers, it would make typing and doing other things very difficult depending on your mood, because they'd be like floppy or, you know. And also, if you saw somebody that you liked or something that you liked and you were a bit in the mood, people would know. You'd be like, you'd have hand boners. And the thing is, if you had dicks for toes, because your toes are very important for balance, and if you had dicks for toes, then you would fall over a lot unless you were in the mood, or maybe not in the mood, but unless you know you had your dick toes were hard, then you would fall over, and that would be quite hazardous as well. I don't really feel like there's a win in this situation, Hannah, and I think that that's on purpose. You designed it that way just to put me on the spot. I don't feel I can commit to dick fingers or dick toes, especially when life is hazardous enough for me already. As I've mentioned before, I've had head injuries many, many times. I don't want any more. In fact, on Friday night, I was playing with a rugby ball with Dad in the garden, and he used to play rugby. I did, but he was really good at it before he hurt his back, and he chucked the rugby ball at me, and it was so fast I didn't have time to catch it properly, although I touched the ball and it got me right in the eyebrow. I bruised my face, it still hurts. I've always been a bit of a tomboy, so I just feel wellard. I was like, yeah, I've got a bruised face. It's amazing. But yeah, I don't need, I think the dick fingers or dick toes would just make things a lot more complicated and hazardous. So I'm sorry, Hannah. I'm not going to answer your dick fingers or dick toes questions, but thank you for a laugh. So thank you so much for joining me on this second episode. You won't have to put up with me on my own next time. Next week we should have loads of material, but it's going to be a surprise which episode is released next. So you'll have to tune in to find out. As I mentioned, Jordan and I will catch up again this week, as well as my two guests, the amazing Amanda Wells and the stunning writer, author and activist Juno Roche. Or Roche. I'm sorry, I'm getting it wrong. I should really ask. I will. So join us next time. Thank you for listening to the Transection podcast. Sign up for our mailing list through the webpage at www.muxharrishill.com/transection. And we'll send you these episodes and all that directly to your inbox. Join us next time for more educational stories. Well, I'm sure we'll slip in a dick joke at some point. It's nothing against dicks, I quite like them. It's just, I'm just childish and I think it's funny, and Jordan definitely agrees with me on that one. Tweet us at TransectionP. You can find us on Instagram at Transection Podcast, or on Facebook under the Transection Podcast. And by the way, we had, I forgot, I got a testimonial. For those of you who follow us on social media, I share occasionally a little tidbit that doesn't make it, like outtakes and whatnot. I shared a few minutes of me telling some very embarrassing stories. They were poo stories. That's not everybody's cup of tea, and that's fine. But I got a testimonial for that one, who says, the name's not included in this one. I lolled at Harris's poop story. That was gold. Jordan replied, I can't believe them. And they replied, I love a good poop story. So thank you. I'm glad that someone appreciated my very disgusting and childish humour. I enjoyed telling it very much. So yeah, if you want to have a look at the poop story, I think it's on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter. It will be on there somewhere. We will see you next time. Until then, build bridges and have fun. Lots of love. Goodbye.